All right, it is time to clean house. I have a lot of viewer responses I need to respond to, and let's do them all today.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, but the best way to get a hold of me is to use the YouTube channel. That's the best way. That's when I read the most. And make sure to use that hashtag everyday Sully because it helps us find you. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. Go to 5hourenergy.com today and use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off of only valid through September 30th. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. So, sometimes you got to clean out the closet. Sometimes you got to go through some stuff, and especially as we're going to, this is the stretch run. It's the final third of the season. You know, when you say, it's around Memorial Day, that's the first check mark of the season. From the beginning of the year to Memorial Day, that's the first check mark of the season. Well, now we have fewer games than that left. So if you're on the bubble, you've lost your chance to make a big trade. Now, maybe there'll be a player or two. Maybe you'll acquire a Marcus Stroman, who has been DFA'd, and maybe he'll be the difference. Who knows? Marcus Stroman could be the man on the mound when the World Series is clinched. But we'll see about that. We're going to see, we are now in August. Can't say it's early anymore. The trade deadline is in the rearview mirror. And so this is really the time of the year that people are going to remember the most. This is right around the training montage of a Rocky film is hanging out right around now. So while some of that excitement's coming up, a lot of the viewer responses I get on the YouTube and everywhere else, I do my best to respond to the ones that really catch my eye. But we're going to go through some of that today. But first of all, let's go through the trivia question I had yesterday. Yesterday I had this trivia question. What was the name of the professional baseball team that Mark Twain followed and whose games he frequently attended? Mark Twain came up because we were talking about unusual baseball games and themes. And I thought maybe because next year is the 150th anniversary of the release of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Why not honor Mark Twain? I'm just spitballing here. A couple of people got this one right. I'm going to go to a Seattle Tall Guy said, Mark Twain followed the Hartford Blue Dukes. Hartford Blue Dukes. Mark Twain was a resident of Hartford, Connecticut for a big part of his adult life, along with the great author William Dean Howells. And so, yes, he was based in Connecticut. And that's actually not far from where I was born, is Connecticut. Do you have the game in Connecticut? No one thinks about Mark Twain from Connecticut. They think of him on the Mississippi River in Hannibal, Missouri, and everything like that. But there you go. A couple people got that one right. I think Scott Horsemeyer was the other one who said he contacted his father, who was a big Mark Twain fan. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, Paul O'Neill is a direct descendant of Mark Twain. So you have him throughout the first pitch. That's spitball it here. Spitball it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. There's a bunch of comments that I have. A couple of them will be, some may be longer winded than others. But I put a bunch of them here on my little banners that I have, and just go read them. This is someone saying something nice to me, so I'm going to ease up. I just want to say my opinion. It's about time someone gave credit to the Jays rather than excuses to the teams that lost to them. I brought that up a few weeks ago when the Yankees did poorly against the Blue Jays, and a couple other teams were saying, "Oh, the Blue Jays, were treating themselves badly because they lost to Toronto." And I think we're seeing that the Blue Jays are actually a very good baseball team. That they're Right now, they're the class of the American League. And we all have to start preparing ourselves. And I say that with my tongue slightly in cheek. We have to prepare ourselves that we could have a World Series that is between the Milwaukee Brewers and the Toronto Blue Jays. There's a much larger than zero chance of that happening. And I, for one, would think that would be great. They're terrific stars on both teams. They're both fan bases that are starving to win a World Series title. Both those fan bases have won NBA titles recently. The Bucks have won one recently. The Raptors have won one relatively recently. So it isn't like they're fan bases that haven't seen a recent championship. But Toronto hasn't seen a World Series title since 1993. And the city of Milwaukee hasn't seen a World Series title since 1957 when the Braves were there. And the Milwaukee Brewers are one of the teams that has never won a World Series. And I think that that would be a matchup between two franchises that their fan bases would be absolutely starving for it. It would be electric. Now, the problem is baseball has no idea how to market anything that isn't the Dodgers versus the Yankees or the Cubs versus the Red Sox. And you will hear people come, if it turns out to be Toronto versus Milwaukee, you'll hear people say, well, who cares about that? Well, figure out how to make people care about it. You see matchups between, fan bases that aren't major markets in the NFL and the NBA, and that becoming a big, big thing because of the star power. The NFL is different because it's a national league, and, you could have a team in Green Bay have national attention. But, I think that'd be fabulous. I think it'd be a fantastic series. First of all, you'd have good pitching. Secondly, you'd have franchises this fan base would be starving for it. So why wouldn't you want that? But I've discovered that no matter who the participant in a World Series is, you are going to see people complain about it. When it was last year, Los Angeles versus New York, like, oh, it's the big market teams buying it as they always do. The year before that, it was Arizona versus Texas. Who cares about those two franchises? And I think that people have to learn to pay attention. Baseball is so regional. It is so regional that people really don't, unless you're a unicorn like myself, you're not really paying attention to anybody that isn't your team that you're seeing every day. This is what I mentioned the other day, and BB87787, I guess that's a kind of a BB-8 reference from The Force Awakens. Thank you for preaching on the Marlins. Every Yankee fan podcast is, how do we get swept by the freaking Marlins? Bro, Marlins 30-14 the last 2 months. Yeah, so you pay attention to teams that are not yours. And you may, I don't know, see some good things happen. I will watch any World Series. And sometimes I have the most fun watching a World Series when I don't have a dog in the fight. The greatest World Series I ever saw was between Minnesota and Atlanta. It's not even close. That's the greatest World Series I ever saw. And sometimes there are great matchups where, like when it was Texas and St. Louis, I didn't have a dog in that fight. By the end, I was rooting for Texas because they had never won a World Series before. But that Game 6 with a ball over Nelson Cruz's head, and the Cardinals came back again, and we'll see you tomorrow night. I mean, I'm not a Cardinal fan nor a Ranger fan, but that game was thrilling. So root for a big matchup in terms of fun, excitement, drama, and fan bases going bananas. And don't ever, if you're watching and think to yourself, well, the ratings of this are going to be really small. Unless you are a sales representative of Tide or Toyota, why the hell would you care about the television ratings? I love it when people say, well, the ratings were really, really low. Well, so what? Then people missed out. But yeah, I'll give the Jays credit, and I'll give the Marlins credit. And whoever our matchup is in the World Series, try to find the good parts of it, because you know why? There's going to be a lot of good baseball played this October. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at FanDuel. Now, summer sports are in full swing in August. Whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, usually pitching. How many strikeouts are Mizorowski going to get? How deep in the game is Paul Skeens going to get? And you know what? With new daily promotions, they can come up with fun ways to make your bets. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes for even those regular season matchups, they feel like playoff games. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you're open FanDuel today to visit FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Pulling back the curtain. Whenever I vamp with a song, it's because a button's not clicking. I probably should have kept that little trade secret behind the curtain there. Let's go to a couple of questions I got that were maybe a little more. I don't want to say. This is what I want to talk about. This is from where he's at Nick W22689 using the rule of 7. For those of you who know, the rule of 7 is I think that you don't really start developing your first memories as a sports fan until you're 7. So anything that happens before you're 7 doesn't really count in your sports suffering or happiness. Using the rule of 7 and being a longtime listener, I know I am now I'm 1 year shy of matching your suffering, meaning my Red Sox fan suffering, with the Mariners. Will I outsuffer Sully? At this point, in my life for you, I had seen at least the Red Sox in the World Series by the time I was 14. I was 14 in 1986. And the Mariners remained the only franchise to never play in a World Series. And despite having the prime of Ken Griffey Jr., most of the prime of A-Rod, most of the prime of Randy Johnson, the entire career of Felix Hernandez, the entire career of Edgar Martinez, most of the entire prime of Ichiro Suzuki. It is a strong possibility. And I love the Northwest. I would live in the Northwest in a heartbeat. And I love this, and I have a great soft spot in my heart for the Seattle Mariners. I feel for you. I absolutely feel for you. And then this one is from Gavin. Where are we right now? Gavin D. Luhash. Is that a Ebby Calvin LaLouche reference? 2994. It's a little late for this episode, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. What do you think of Bobby Grich if he belongs to the Hall of Fame? I think Bobby Grich has an incredibly intriguing case for the Hall of Fame. There are 2 second basemen who were contemporaries. One was Bobby Grich and one was Lou Whitaker. Their careers certainly folded over for a while. Lou Whitaker is an absolute no-brainer for the Hall of Fame. I do not understand why his Hall of Fame candidacy was a one and done. Bobby Grich's was also a one and done. I think people with a better understanding of some of the more complicated metrics will understand that Bobby Grich's value as an offensive player in his time with Baltimore and California, that's what they're called, and they're California Angels. We'll look at it. I think that there are times that the Veterans Committee comes in and it fixes some mistakes. We saw that just last year with Dick Allen and Dave Parker. I hope we don't have to wait for their death. I hope that both Bobby Grich and Lou Whitaker, I hope they get in on while they're still alive. Okay, this was a slightly contentious one. Not really contentious. Garrett Sherwin's a big Pirate fan and a really good Pirate fan. And he had some words of disagreement with me regarding the episode that I did where I took the Pirates to task after the Ke'Bryan Hayes trade. And he wrote to me, the Pirates are a joke organization and not serious about winning because they traded a guy slashing 236, 279, 290 with a 569 OPS and a 59 OPS plus. There was more to it than that, but his point is very well taken. And Garrett, in a vacuum, I totally understand what you're saying. And I am actually not saying that the trade of Ke'Bryan Hayes is the sign that the Pirates are not serious about putting a contender on the field. but it is a symptom. It has been a decade since the Pirates have really been relevant. They were wonderful. And the run they had in 2013, 2014, 2015 was wonderful. And that 3-year span is the only 3-year span since the advent of the wild card that the Pirates have been relevant. They've only had, other than those 3 years, what, 1 or 2 other winning seasons? And those are their only 3 trips to the postseason with extended playoffs. And they've had number 1 and number 2 picks. They've picked at the top of the line, and they hit the jackpot with one of them, which is Paul Skeens. And my problem was not just this trade in a vacuum. I understand you could make a case that getting that contract off the books is a smart move. In a vacuum, I 100% agree with that. What I'm saying is you have an ace pitcher. You have a franchise ace pitcher. And the goal should be to surround that ace pitcher with major leaguers and not for the consistent, we're building for the future. What future are you building for? You've got the ace. You should be building around him. And what have they done? Inform me of what they've done. Re-signing Reynolds long-term? Okay, that hasn't worked out great, but at least that's an attempt to keep a major leaguer around. Brian Hayes was an attempt to keep a major leaguer on the Pirates for a while. It didn't work out, certainly, with his bat. And you can make the case that, okay, they got other minor leaguers coming up who'd be able to fill it. But okay, but are you going to waste the prime of Paul Skeens? And why the hell would Paul Skeens sign with this team long term? That's my problem with it. It's been a decade. They've had a decade to put a decent team together. People crap on the A's and the Marlins, and rightfully so. But the A's tore apart their team in 2014, and by 2018, they were a playoff team again. And the Marlins they had a playoff team in the COVID year, and then in 2023, they had a down year last year. It looks like they're going to have a winning season this year. Why does it take forever for the Pirates to put together a team? They're a joke organization, not just because of the Brian Hayes situation, but the fact that it's been a decade and there's no end in sight. There doesn't even seem to be a plan. That's my problem with it. And the fact that they're trading away major leaguers, even those who are, performing underwhelmingly for the future, maybe you don't trade Brian Hayes when his value is at its lowest. Maybe you hope he has a bounce back season. You have him signed to a long-term deal. I don't know. And these players they get as they trade away terrific players, how many terrific pitchers or former Pirates are floating around there right now? And what do they have in return? I mean, crap on the Marlins all you want, and I do, but they got players back in the Luis Arraez trade and in the Jazz Chisholm trade. The Nationals got good players back when they traded away everything that wasn't nailed down after winning the World Series in 2019. Why can't the Pirates? How bad is this organization? They're not putting a product on the field that's a major league product. That's my problem with it. And how long is this rebuilding going to be? Here's one. When I did my Pride Month episode, some of you really liked that. Some of you didn't. What are you going to do? I stand by what I said. And a little bit later, I did a show where I said that baseball has to be a unifier. Where the temperature in this country is off the charts. And we need to find things that people who you don't agree with, you got to find some things that we can agree together on. That's something, baseball has to be a part of that. You're sitting in a ballpark, you don't know that person's politics, you don't know that person's religion, you don't know that person's sexuality, but you can both say, hey, we can all agree that the Yankees defense sucks, no matter who you are. Now, in regards to my Pride Month episode and then baseball needs to be unifier, a fellow named David Church wrote this, and he said, David Church 5171 says, does Pride Month bring us together? Yeah, I think so. I think so for this reason. First of all, for people who identify with a sexual orientation that isn't hard on the heterosexual side of the spectrum, they can enjoy baseball. They can have happiness as much as anyone else can. And baseball is a unifying thing, and having a Pride Month is don't be ashamed of who you are. There's another thing that we have to agree with every once in a while, and that is this little phrase: not everything's about you. I do that all the time. I am not a very religious person at all. And I know a lot of people are. I know a lot of my listeners are. And I see there's no shortage in baseball of like a Christian testimony night or a prayer night or whatever. Those are on ballparks from coast to coast and everywhere in between. And it does not apply to me. Do I want to see those go away? Absolutely not. But Sully, you're not religious. That's right. I'm not. But many people are. And they should enjoy being prideful of who they are and their beliefs and be amongst people who they say, hey, we're together on this. Much like there was like a Hawaiian Polynesian night at San Francisco not too long ago. I'm neither Hawaiian nor Polynesian. And yet having a night where, hey, we're at the ballpark and let's celebrate that tonight. It isn't about me, but it is about we can all enjoy the game together. Now, whether or not you agree with this person or you agree with that person or you condone this or you don't condone that, what could bring us together is baseball. And saying, here's someone who I may not agree with. I may not agree with their faith. I may not agree with their beliefs. I may not agree with this value, this or the other thing. Okay. But can we agree that we have this in common? And we can have nights where the individual groups, some you may belong to, some you may not, have a night to celebrate. And do you know what? If you say, well, that's not me, all right, it's not. Enjoy the game anyway. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about, there's a group that, I'm not like them, but they're at the ballpark with me. Well, let's start from there. So yes, absolutely it does. So does the Testimony Day. So does the Honor of the Veterans Day. So does the Honor of the Teachers Day. So does Honor SpongeBob SquarePants. Let's focus on here's what will bring us together no matter who you are and what you believe. And maybe, just maybe, you have an issue with this group or that group, or they believe this and I don't believe that. You can take the common element of enjoying a ball game and enjoying baseball and say, I don't agree with them, but we have this thing in common. So maybe, just maybe, the person doing the testimony night or the person at Pride Night isn't so bad because we have that in common. It isn't just, it's for everybody. It's sometimes let's break down who the everybody is. So yeah, the answer is yes. I'm glad we can talk about it. Glad we can agree. All right, let's talk about 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor to your favorite golf drink. And believe you me, I need a drink when I'm playing golf. Now, it's minus the alcohol. And it takes it into an amazing, quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends and family, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Now, look, there's some days you're on the golf course, things are great. Sometimes you need that little boost. I think I talked about it. I played with my cousin Josh and our dear friend Eleanor, and the three of us were golfing. And Eleanor's the best golfer of the three of us. And she was making shots over the sand trap. She was over the pond. And I kept looking over and said, man. I felt like such a dog watching Eleanor play golf. And do you know what? Sometimes she would make a great shot. And like, am I going to put down a bet on that? And do you know what? You put a hole in one. Eleanor didn't get a hole in one, but she birdied a couple of times. Now, let me just tell you something. Golf is all about good times with good friends and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. And believe me, Eleanor would chase down that Bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid through September 30th on one order and can't be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. 5-Hour Energy. That's the number 5hourenergy.com. Use that promo code LOCKEDONGolf. You should see Eleanor swing those clubs. Okay, I'm going to go through. This is my favorite one. Let's go. This was actually a two-parter on here. I brought up in my A-Rod should be a manager, and I stand by that. I think he'd be a wonderful manager. And the whole A-Rod and Mike Trout. I talked about Eleanor. Yes, Eleanor should be a manager. I talked about A-Rod and Mike Trout being potential managers. And I was asked a question about the vilification of A-Rod is something that completely flummoxes me. And I said, it has nothing to do with PEDs because people hated A-Rod before they knew he was using PEDs. Just like people hated Bonds before he blew up as well. And they like to lean on the PEDs as an excuse. But I think that we see people who have used PEDs who are fan favorites. And the two that I brought up were, I brought up David Ortiz, who's in the Hall of Fame as well. He should be. And I brought up Andy Pettitte, who used PEDs, and his number is retired, and he's considered a god in New York. Well, Guardian Elfie, I don't know. You said, and there was a lot to this, and if I try to put this entire comment on here, I might crash your computer because it was that long. Actually, I just got the Cliff Notes for it and got the YouTube comment on tape on Audible, and I just listened to that because it was a good 5 or 6 hours long. But I'm going to give you the highlights of the comments. You really can't compare A-Rod's PED use to Pettitte's. Pettitte's did a PED that one time while he was sidelined with injury and didn't use them when he was actually able to play. And it continues. A-Rod was a fiend for PEDs. He did them literally on the playing field during games. First of all, we have to change our use of the word literally. Literally and actually, they're synonymous in many ways. And when you say literally, it means it is something that actually happened, not a figment or a play on words. So A-Rod wasn't literally on the playing field during games with a syringe like that. They would have seen that on ESPN. By the way, this is I couldn't not include this. A-Rod was a fiend for PEDs. That was my favorite thing. That was my favorite thing that he wrote, or she. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to gender you there. I've heard this a lot about Pettitte. And by the way, he did it that one time. How do you know that? That's ridiculous to think he only did one time. This isn't Captain America. He didn't give the one shot and then now he's strong. The apologies for Pettitte, who by the way at first denied it, and then was shown the goods. He said, "Oh, I only did it that one time, and I was praying to Jesus the whole time, and I felt sad the whole time." No, it's ridiculous. You cycle PEDs. It's not one shot and now me big strong as bull. No, it's a system that you go through. And by the way, did you notice Andy Pettitte, when he left the Yankees to the Astros, Roger Clemens went there. When Andy went back to the Yankees, Roger Clemens, the two of them were zigzagging across the country. He was zigzagging across the country while being best friends with one of the most notorious PED users. We found he did PEDs, but he only did it that one time, and he was crying the whole time he was doing it. That's not how PEDs work, and that's not how logic works. And I don't begrudge Andy Pettitte for taking PEDs. Look, if someone said, "Hey, Sully, if you take this drug, you will get the same ratings that Joe Rogan would get," I'm not going to say I would necessarily take it, but I'd got to give it a lot of thought. He's crisscrossing the country, one of the most notorious PED users, and you're trying to say he only did it once, which doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense logistically. It doesn't make sense in terms of PEDs. You liked Andy Pettitte because Andy Pettitte seemed like a nice dude. A-Rod seemed like a stuck-up prima donna. That's the whole thing. This is lunacy. Oh, he only did it once. He only did it once. Stop. As my dad would say, stop. Come on. That's just ridiculous. Hey, quickly got to do the trivia question. It is the August 5th. Birthday is Eric Hinsky. Eric Hinsky belongs with Don Baylor and Will Smith as the only person to do what in the World Series? Don Baylor, Eric Hinsky, and Will Smith are the only person to do what in the World Series? Put your answers right down there. I got to wrap this up pretty quickly because we're running out of time. Thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, check out the all-new, is it so new anymore? Check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night and Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Wrapping it up fast. This has been Locked On MLB, doing a show where I'm reading the news. This has been this is Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. I wrapped up wrong. You can call me Sully.